Hey there everyone, I'm Fox 10 News meteorologist Jennifer Lambers with an update on Hurricane Milton. Now we did just get that new advisory update down from the National Hurricane Center, so let's go ahead and dive right in. But just a reminder, in case you're joining us live, we are live streaming on our Fox 10 Facebook page. I'm reading those comments there in case you have any questions for me. We're also live streaming on our YouTube page and on all of our Gulfstream platforms, so that'll be the Fox 10 apps on either Roku, Apple Stick, Apple TV, or Fire Stick. There we go. Or also you can download the Fox 10 News app to your phone or your iPad, and that way you can stay updated with everything that's going on. But again, I'm monitoring those comments here on the Facebook page in case anyone has any questions for me. But let's go ahead and dive right into what this new 1 p.m. advisory update from the National Hurricane Center looks like. And so Milton is still a Category 4 hurricane, barely. Just a reminder, the Saffir-Simpson scale, it's going to be that 129 mile per hour that it needs to be there. So I'm going to have a full look at that Saffir-Simpson scale here in just a moment. But it is tracking north-northeast at 16 miles per hour. That pressure is going up 944 millibars. Just this morning, those sustained winds were over 150 miles per hour. At that last check, just a little bit before lunchtime, we were seeing that the sustained winds were in around 145. Now it's at 130. So we are starting to see some of that weakening continue to take place before that landfall approach heading into tonight. And looking at the track for the system, the National Hurricane Center still has Milton making landfall as a major hurricane. This is just going to be that Category 3 storm at landfall. They're estimating those winds to be around 125 miles. But regardless of what that number says at landfall, Milton's still going to be bringing significant impacts to portions of Florida, really central to southern on the Florida peninsula there. So the track still also has that landfall approach just a little bit on the south side of Tampa. And so we're really just going to be seeing more of those impacts to Bradenton, Sarasota, Naples, Fort Myers. They're going to be seeing more of that. But currently that center track just does have it making landfall a little bit south of Sarasota, in between Sarasota and Venice. So that'll be where that current center track has it going. But we're already getting a better look on radar. But here is again is going to be that Saffir-Simpson scale. And so it's just barely holding on to that Cat 4 strength. It needs that 130. And so 1 mile per hour just above being that Category 3 hurricane. Regardless, devastating, catastrophic damage will be brought to the Florida peninsula. So that's the reminder of what that scale looks like. Still expected to be that major hurricane landfall heading into this evening. Here's a look at that radar and satellite, and there's a lot going on here. And so now that Milton is getting closer towards land, that's where we're able to pick it up on some of our radar sites here. We're getting a much better look at some of those outer rain bands already beginning to push in. Early this morning, we were tracking just some of those tornado warnings, just trying to count how many there are here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It looks to be about 10, possibly even more active tornado warnings for portions of Florida there. Seeing some of those near Fort Pierce, Melbourne, also just south of Orlando, already beginning to see some of those. We'll likely see more of those outer rain bands and that area of rotation tracking into Orlando. Fort Myers was seeing some of those earlier, and now some just beginning to push into the Everglades with that new rain band there at the bottom of the screen. And so if you know anyone that lives in any of those areas, especially Orlando, Tampa, Sarasota, Fort Myers, they're still going to be feeling some of those impacts already from that rain, some of those gusty winds, and those tornado warnings that are already beginning to track through. Now the tropical alerts that are in place, seeing the hurricane warnings go from the west coast to the east coast, as Milton is expected just to track right over those areas. That's where those hurricane force winds, those impacts will be felt. Tropical storm warnings is going to be more of that darker red coloration. And then seeing also some of those tropical storm watches just towards the coastal areas of Georgia and South Carolina, where they could possibly see some of those tropical storm impacts. Now, looking in closer towards home, no impacts for us here locally. The only thing that we're going to be experiencing with Hurricane Milton is down at our local beaches, seeing some of that rough surf, those high waves. So just make sure that you're being cautious in case you are visiting us. But here's a look at the overall impacts. So really right where we saw that hurricane warning, that's where that pink coloration is, because that's where the significant impacts are expected. So even regardless of where that landfall is, we start to see that track moving a little further south. Tampa still going to be hit significantly. Orlando going to be hit significantly from this system, along with Fort Myers. Everywhere on the west side going to be looking at the potential for more of that strong storm surge. But then you still have those outer rain bands, the hurricane force winds that are going to be moving through, and just those tornado warnings. So tree limbs, power outages, that'll be significant, with millions of people feeling the impacts. I had mentioned that storm surge that'll be a really big factor in this, and I want to look back to Hurricane Helene. If you remember, we were checking in on the Tampa area when Helene was moving through. It stayed off the coast there, just bringing in some of those outer rain bands, but they really saw a lot of that storm surge, and that was around 7 to 8 feet. We're expecting even higher amounts with Hurricane Milton, and showing some of that through Tampa, extending down through Bradenton, Sarasota. That's where we're starting to see more of that 8 to 15 foot storm surge, even down towards Fort Myers, showing that 6 to 9 foot range. And so these will be heavy numbers. We were showing some of the video earlier of areas near Tampa that after what they dealt with Helene, they had put all of that debris at the road, just waiting for some of those crews to come and pick it up. However, they weren't picking it up. They were trying overnight. They were working really hard to get some of that, but they just couldn't keep up with all of the damage that they had seen. So that'll be something that does play a factor into this system, is that you already have all of that debris just sitting out there that's going to be picked up with some of that storm surge. And that's what's going to be moving into some of these homes, into these businesses, just making it easier for it to pick up some of that debris. We saw some wood planks out there. I saw some furniture out there from that video we were showing on Fox 10 midday. So that'll be something to watch out for. The wind field forecast, we are expecting already some of those tropical storm force winds to be felt just along the coastline. This wind field forecast really has those beginning to ramp up as we get further along into the afternoon. So Milton's still offshore, but more of those hurricane force winds begin to push in later on this evening. So we're after sunset by that point, 8, 9 o'clock. Feeling those Category 3 hurricane winds. That's going to be over 110 miles per hour as they are closer towards the center there. This one tracks right over Sarasota, but bringing in some of those winds just closer towards Tampa. And then as we get further along into the evening, we're slowly starting to see some of that weakening, but we get past midnight. So it is going to be moving pretty slowly over land. And then we get into around 7 a.m. That's when we start to introduce some of that daylight, but Milton's still tracking towards the east coast of Florida. So Orlando, you can see Disney World lit up there. We had Disney World closed. We had SeaWorld closed. A lot of those amusement parks closing today, tomorrow, because of the impacts that they're expecting. The Orlando Airport started that closure today. They're closed tomorrow too, just because they'll still be feeling some of those impacts heading into tomorrow, despite that landfall taking place tonight. And then we start to see Milton weakening a little bit as it moves offshore, but still leaving some of those tropical storm force winds in the wake of it heading into Thursday around lunchtime. And it's still going to be breezy even behind it. But one of the reasons why Milton is beginning to weaken, this is something that we had talked about for the past week, is going to be some of that dry air. We were expecting that cold front to move down. That's what's keeping Milton away from us. It helped divert it away. That's why typically here in October and November, meteorologist Matt Barentine was talking about this on Fox 10 News, we get all of these fronts around this season. And so that's what helps to deflect some of these tropical systems. Those cold fronts that we have around this time of year, they help us out because they push it all away. And so that's exactly what we saw with Hurricane Milton. Also, it's introducing some shear and some of that dry air. So it's helping just to disrupt it, weaken it a little bit, but still expecting it to be that major Category 3 hurricane at landfall, despite some of that weakening, bringing in those significant impacts. As mentioned here locally, what do we have in the Foxton viewing area? That's going to be rough surf. Here's your view down in Orange Beach. A lot of folks getting out there and still enjoying what our beaches have to offer. We do have a lot of evacuees in this area. Some of them finding just that comfort to go towards the beach and renting some of those condos there just to get away, but still enjoy their time. They're checking in on home, but we are expecting those rip current risks to continue to stay high heading into today and tomorrow. A little breezy out there. Those temperatures in the mid 80s. We're seeing some of that dry air continue in place, but as mentioned, that rip current risk today, tomorrow it's high. It actually drops down to moderate by Friday, because by that point Milton has already tracked across Florida and is going to be emerging out into the Atlantic. So in the wake of Milton, we'll start to see some of those calm waters return, and by the weekend that rip current risk turns to low. We really start to notice some of those improvements. Things look better. Our winds will be calm. And so taking a look at our futurecast, cloud cover today, highest chances closer towards Okaloosa County, possibly Destin, seeing some of that cloud cover later on today. But other than that, we are sunny, we are dry. We still have a little bit of that dry air in place. Dew points ranging in the 60s. That Milton sensor tends to always be a little dramatic there, so I feel like the dew points there are just closer towards the 60s. So still feeling pleasant, but we are feeling warm. Our temperatures will be in the mid to upper 80s, the lower 90s out there. And then the next few mornings, our temperatures to begin in the morning, they're going to be pleasant. We're going to be starting off in the 50s, and taking a look at the next 7 days. Again, we have straight sunshine heading into the weekend here on the central Gulf Coast, in the Mobile area, Pensacola, down towards Destin and our Mississippi coastline. And so we're going to be staying calm, quiet, seeing that sunshine, temperatures even falling heading into the weekend. A much different picture for our friends, our family, and our neighbors just there towards central to southern Florida. So in case you're joining us late, I was giving you that update on Hurricane Milton. Right now it is still that Category 4 storm. I'm trying to get that to load up here real quick, but it's just barely holding on to that Category 4 strength. At 129 miles per hour for those sustained winds, that is Category 3. So it's only 1 mile per hour above that. So it's barely holding on to that Cat 4 strength. We are getting these updates hourly from the National Hurricane Center. So we are expecting that next one once we get closer towards 2 p.m. And they're really just going to be giving us those updates on the strength, the intensity of the system. So that way we just continue to see if it's continuing on this weakening trend. And we will expect that to likely be that Category 3 storm at that 2 p.m. advisory update if it continues on the trend that we've already been seeing. Just in the past hour, we've seen those sustained winds go down by 15 miles per hour. So that is more of a promising sight, but that storm surge will still be a main concern with Milton as it approaches closer towards the west coast there in Florida, along with some of those breezy winds, already saturated soil, a lot of trees down in that area, and some of those tornado warnings that we've seen firing off. So throughout today, we've been checking in on some of those camera views. We had a lot of those during Fox 10 midday. We'll have more of those coming up on Fox 10 Live beginning at 3 p.m. But if you look at what's all lighting up on the radar there, it's some of those outer rain bands, but I'll even take it away so you can just start to see all of those. That's going to be all of those tornado warnings just lighting up the Florida Peninsula. On social media, I was seeing one that was just over the Everglades, quite the tornado that was tracking through the Everglades right along I-75. They're picking it up on some of those traffic cameras, and so that'll be a main concern heading into the rest of this afternoon, as some of that rotation that we could possibly see there. Seeing some of those just continue to hold together. The rotation has been impressive in some of those cells and some of those couplets. And so in case you know anyone that lives in those areas, just make sure you're checking in with them. Hopefully they have a way to stay updated on the forecast and continuing to track some of those storms. But looking in closer, I mean, that is really lighting up the majority of that part of the state with all of those tornado warnings. We're going to continue to monitor Hurricane Milton for you here on Fox 10. We will keep you updated all along the way. Again, we'll have more of those live updates, that next one coming out at 2 p.m., but we'll have additional coverage coming up on Fox 10 Live beginning at 3, and Chief Meteorologist Jason Smith will keep you updated coming up later on Fox 10 News at 4 and 5 o'clock, along later on this evening, 9 and 10 p.m., once Milton gets closer towards that landfall. Please just check in with all of your friends and family if you know anyone that lives in that area, whether it extends from Tampa down towards Fort Myers across to Orlando, because there are millions of people located there. They are really going to be feeling those impacts from Hurricane Milton. We'll also keep you updated on our forecast here locally, but again, additional updates coming up on Fox 10 News later on this evening.